बहुत महत्वपूर्ण कैबिनेट के फैसले हुए जिसकी जानकारी निर्मला जी आपको देगी। इन बैंकों में पिछले सालों में 40,000 करोड़ रुपए सरकार ने रिकैपिटलाइज किया है। दूसरा एक बड़ा फैसला कंपनीज एक्ट के बारे में हुआ है। आपको मालूम है एक तरह से 2013 का कंपनीज एक्ट बहुत बार बदलना पड़ा क्योंकि पूरे कंपनियों के क्षेत्र में उससे बहुत एक अस्थिरता सी तैयार हुई और इसलिए एक जो क्रिमिनलिटी का भाग था वो हटाना अनावश्यक जो था और ईज ऑफ डूइंग बढ़ाना और विदेशी स्टॉक एक्सचेंज में लिस्टिंग करके कैपिटल इकट्ठा करने की व्यवस्था करना, ऐसे बहुत अहम फैसले उसमें आए। लगभग 65 चेंजेस है, तो वो मैडम बताएगी आपको। एक तीसरे फैसले में एयर इंडिया के, आपको मालूम है कि एयर इंडिया का स्ट्रैटेजिक सेल होगा, तो उसमें जो एनआरआई भारतीय नागरिक है उनको भी खरीद में अवसर मिले, इसके लिए बहुत बड़े निर्णय लिया है। पहले ये था कि पहले जो स्कीम थी उसके में एनआरआई केवल 49% ले सकते थे, अब वो 100% ले सकते हैं। और एयर इंडिया के नियम के तहत पहले जो संभव नहीं था अब संभव हुआ है। शेड्यूल्ड एयरक्राफ्ट ऑपरेटर का और जो एक रूल था सब्सटैंशियल ओनरशिप इफेक्टिव कंट्रोल, इससे एनआरआई के रोल को मर्यादा आ रही थी, वो खत्म करी है। अब रास्ता खुला है, अपना नेशनल कैरियर चलेगा, निजी व्यवस्थापन आएगा, निजी हाथों में आएगा, लेकिन सेवा लोगों को मिलती रहेगी और निवेश के अवसर बढ़ेंगे। मोदी सरकार के 5 साल में एफडीआई का जो काम हुआ है, इतने निर्णय हुए हैं कि दुनिया का एफडीआई में एक सबसे फेवरेट डेस्टिनेशन आज भारत बन गया है। और इसलिए पहले 14 साल में जितना हुआ उसका 75% केवल पिछले 5 साल में हुआ है। यानी 2000 से 2014 तक $360 बिलियन आए, लेकिन 2014 से 19 तक 5 साल में 282 करोड़ आए, 75% से ज्यादा होता है। और अभी 2020 के भी आंकड़े आएंगे, वो भी अच्छे ही है, हर साल बढ़ रहे हैं। मैं बताता हूं, बिलियन डॉलर्स। सी एफडीआई अंडर मोदी गवर्नमेंट इज इंक्रीजिंग एवरी ईयर ऑन ईयर बिकॉज ऑफ वेरियस पॉलिसी मेजर्स टेकन। India has become a most favored destination for FDI, and therefore if we take last 19 years, because that's when the real FDI started to flow in the first 14 years we got $360 billion. But in last 5 years, we got 282 crore, that is 75% of what we got in 14 years. And the latest figure will come in March of 1920, which will also be much more than the last year. And as you know, single brand retail, coal mining, contract manufacturing, all have resulted in more inflows of FDI, which helps in creation of employment, which helps in increasing the production, India becoming the manufacturing hub slowly but surely. And therefore, this is a very positive trend, and in that direction, today's decision of Air India also is one milestone decision where NRIs of Indian who are Indian nationals will get permission to invest 100% in Air India. And this will pave the way for fresh investments. Passengers will continue to get better and better services, and at the same time, this will improve the whole atmosphere of investments. We had also taken a decision about MOU with Costa Rica on health issue, press note of which we are giving to you. But one thing was discussed after the cabinet, and that was about coronavirus. And government is proactively engaged to tackle the situation. So Prime Minister himself is monitoring the situation. Every day he spends time to do that. Cabinet Secretary and concerned officials meet every day. They do video conferencing with all state governments every day. The health minister has just concluded his press conference, so he is also active, going and visiting the field. As you know, Manesar, in Manesar the facility was created for isolation. From Wuhan, 2 batches of Indians have come. The ship, Japanese ship, which was infected, there were 124 Indians and 5, out of which 5 were foreign nationals. We brought them safely here. We have started screening on 21 airports. And screening of 6 lakh passengers has been already done. The open borders along Bhutan and Nepal, in last 1 month, more than 10 lakh people have been screened. And those border towns, border area towns, that are also been screened. There was only one virology lab in Pune. Now we have already set up 15 more, and 19 we are going to establish in few days' time. We have issued necessary travel advisories to guide Indian passengers and those traveling from abroad. For certain period from many countries, the visa on arrival has been suspended. And the main job is to create awareness in the society. And therefore all sections need to take precautions which are that way very simple. But these are important, and therefore this topic, though not part of the cabinet decision, because it's an ongoing thing, we discussed it practically in all last 4 cabinet meetings. We discussed after cabinet meeting the latest on coronavirus, and today also we have done this. You will get press note of all the 4 decisions after the press conference, and about corona also within 1 hour, not 1 year. And now over to Nirmala ji. हाँ हिंदी में आ रहे हैं. हाँ, या ऐसा हुआ आपने एक बार ये शुरू हुआ तो इंग्लिश से शुरू हुआ. बताता हूँ कोरोना का कोरोना वायरस दुनिया भर में एक महत्वपूर्ण विषय बन गया है. भारत सरकार इसमें लगातार अग्रसर है और स्वयं प्रधानमंत्री रोज इस विषय में पूरा निरीक्षण कर रहे हैं, ध्यान दे रहे हैं दिशा दिग्दर्शन कर रहे हैं। कैबिनेट सेक्रेटरी के नेतृत्व में अधिकारियों की, आला अधिकारियों की, संबंधित विभागों के एक कमेटी बनी है जो रोज राज्यों के साथ और स्टेक होल्डर्स के साथ वीडियो कॉन्फ्रेंसिंग करती है। हेल्थ मिनिस्ट्री और स्वयं स्वास्थ्य मंत्री इसके बारे में लगातार एक्टिवली काम कर रहे हैं। आपको पता है शुरू में ही मानेसर में एक आइसोलेशन, क्योंकि जिसको भी इन्फेक्शन होता है उसे 14 दिन अलग रहना पड़ता है, तो आइसोलेशन के लिए मानेसर के कैंप की व्यवस्था की थी। और वुहान जहां मुख्यतः इन्फेक्शन का ज्यादा फैलाव था, वहां से भारतीयों को 2 बैचेस में, छात्रों को और अन्य भारतीयों को भी लाया गया है। अभी 21 एयरपोर्ट पर जो भी इंटरनेशनल पैसेंजर आता है उसका स्क्रीनिंग होता है और स्क्रीनिंग 6 लाख लोगों का हुआ है। जो खुली बॉर्डर है यानी नेपाल के साथ या भूटान के साथ, म्यांमार के साथ, वहां से आने वाले सभी नागरिकों का लगभग सीमा पर 10 लाख लोगों का स्क्रीनिंग हुआ है। जो सीमावर्ती गांव है उसका भी एक महत्व है कि वहां इन्फेक्शन अगर जल्दी आता है तो इसलिए वहां भी स्क्रीनिंग हुआ है, ऐतिहासिक कदम उठाए गए हैं। एक वायरोलॉजी जो टेस्ट होती है 6 घंटे लगते हैं उसमें, और उस टेस्ट के लिए केवल अभी पुणे की लेबोरेटरी थी, अब उसके जगह 15 और स्थापित किए गए हैं और 19 और स्थापित इस सप्ताह में होंगे। आपको पता है कि जैसे वुहान से लाया वैसे जापानी जहाज पर भी लोग अटके थे। जो इन्फेक्शन कुछ लोगों को हुआ था उसमें 119 लोग भारतीय थे और 5 विदेशी भी जिनको संक्रमण नहीं हुआ था, उनको सुचारू रूप से भारत में वापस लाया गया। सारे दुनिया से आने वाले लोगों का असुविधा न हो, लेकिन कोई इन्फेक्शन लेकर भारत में न आए, इसलिए ट्रैवल एडवाइजरी जारी की है। अनेक देशों का ऑटोमेटिक वीजा का जो व्यवस्था थी उसको थोड़े समय के लिए स्थगित किया है। और अवेयरनेस, ये मुख्य उत्तर है कि लोग अपनी छोटी सी, अगर हम सब लोग भी अगर छोटी सी हम उसमें रोज खुद का ख्याल करेंगे तो हम इससे बचेंगे निश्चित है। और इसलिए देश को जो दुनिया में फैल रहा एक जो इन्फेक्शन है उससे बचाने के लिए भारत सरकार बहुत सजगता से अग्रसर है और काम कर रही है। यही है। ओवर टू निर्मला जी ऑन 2 issues. Yeah.
Thank you, Prakash ji. You are aware that this government gives a lot of importance for ease of doing business and also ease of living. In order that we take that in every bit of what we do in the government through the legislative steps that we have, a lot of consultation happened during the budget and pre-budget preparations. You are aware that between July and February, a lot of consultation took place with the industry. We had a lot of inputs again coming from them in making ease of doing business a lot more meaningful. There was also a group of ministers which went into looking at the Companies Act and seeing how many such sections have something which worries the business and makes it difficult for them to do every bit of compliance. And therefore, the group of ministers, the pre-budget consultation, all resulted in a lot of suggestions which then we went through the process of looking at the Companies Act. Now, therefore, we went with the proposal to the Cabinet in which we suggested 72 changes to 65 sections, meaning for those 72 changes, we need to amend 65 sections of the Companies Act, which was passed in 2013. And all of you are quite aware, between 2013 and today, this particular act has gone through repeated, stakeholder consultation and also taking a lot of input and amending so that it results in greater ease for the companies which have to follow. So as a result, in this particular set of amendments, the priority is to decriminalize this act. So majority of what is being changed is to remove those particular sections or particular, technical requirements, all of which result in giving a criminality to the offense which may not be at all intended to be malified. So what we have done is 72 changes, all of which have been approved by the cabinet, which will result in amending 65 sections. The major thrust, of course, is looking at ease of doing business and decriminalizing. So, what is being proposed is as follows. We'll recategorize 23 offences out of 66 compoundable offences under the Act. There are 66 compoundable offences, of which 23 will get recategorized and they will be dealt with an in-house adjudicating framework. So of the 66 compoundable offences, 23 will be recategorized and they will now be capable of being handled within an in-house framework which can adjudicate on the matter. Second, we are omitting 7 compoundable offences altogether. Third, we are limiting the punishment for 11 compoundable offences to only fine by removing, this is important, by removing imprisonment in total. I'll repeat that point, that's the third point. Limiting punishment for 11 compoundable offences, and those limiting will enable us to restrict it to just fines and there shall not be imprisonment on them. So that the provision which existed for imprisoning has been removed. Then the fourth point is 5 offences are to be dealt with under different alternative frameworks. And then the sixth is reducing the quantum of penalties in respect of 6 defaults decriminalized earlier. Earlier also there was an attempt which we had done, and even in that now we want to reduce even the quantum of penalties. I'll repeat this one point, or you want me to do the last point is, we had decriminalized some aspects earlier also. Not just through this amendment which is coming this time, but for those in which the decriminalization had already taken place and only penalties were to be included, for those also the quantum of penalties is also being reduced now. Clear now? That's, yeah, the first one was recategorizing 23 offences out of 66. And those 23 will have in-house adjudicating framework. Second is removing 7 altogether, which had compoundable offences nature. Third is limiting the punishment for 11 compoundable offences, which earlier had a provision for imprisonment. Now we are removing them totally. In the sense, we are removing the imprisonment angle and limiting the punishment. 5 offences, which is the next point, 5 offences to be dealt under alternative framework. And the last, which is the sixth, is reducing the quantum of penalties for those 6 defaults which were decriminalized earlier. Besides this, from the point of view of ease of living a lot of steps have been taken up and all of them have been approved. I'll draw your attention to one which is very, very important. We are exempting companies which have an obligation to spend 50 lakhs or less under the CSR. Companies which have an obligation to spend 50 lakhs or less, such companies are being exempt from the requirement of having a CSR committee. Am I making myself clear? Companies which have an obligation to spend 50 lakhs shall no longer be required to have a CSR committee. So this is one of the steps taking. And also, again, a demand which had come from several CSR obligated companies which were readily spending a lot of money was, suppose they in one particular year spend more than 2%, because every company is expected to spend 2% of its obligation is only to spend 2% every year. But in some projects, like if they were building a hospital or so, more than 2% is required to spend even at the first go, which means assume they had to spend 2 plus 2% within 1 year. The general approach was we'll take into consideration 2%. The other 2% it doesn't get included in the year's list. We have now allowed companies to be able to spend more than 2% within 1 year, but be able to carry it forward for crediting themselves on the CSR front for the next 2 or 3 years. So we are allowing flexibility to use more than 2% even within 1 year. Like that, there are so many different steps which have been taken from the point of view of ease of living. The details will be given to you as a press release. But I think the cabinet today has taken this decision to decriminalize Companies Act provisions, and as a result of which I think the law becomes a bit more humane. The elements which had all crept into it since 2013 when the act was passed in such a hurry are now being weeded out of those elements which will make it a bit more easier to comply with. That's about the Companies Act. The other is the announcement which I had made earlier about amalgamation of public sector banks. In 2017, you had 27 banks. Now, there will be 12 banks only. This announcement, which we had made sometime in August 2019, involves amalgamating 10 banks into 4. So, you have an Oriental Bank of Commerce and United Bank of India getting amalgamated into Punjab National Bank. Then you have Andhra Bank and Corporation Bank getting amalgamated into Union Bank of India. You have Syndicate Bank amalgamated into Canara Bank, and also Allahabad Bank amalgamated into Indian Bank. One highlight which I would like to draw your attention to is we had definitely gone into the details of Bank of Baroda's amalgamation, which had happened earlier, looked at what has been the outcome within the short span, with an intention of understanding if there's any lessons that we need to learn, and also what impact has it had on the performance. Because ultimately, amalgamations are being done so that customers will reap the benefit of a larger bank, scaled up bank, more fund available for credit, and so on. The experience of Vijaya Bank and Dena Bank being amalgamated into Bank of Baroda, I'd like to just highlight a few points which tell you that eventually it is for the benefit of the customers. The branch networks continue to be the same, 9,400 branches, 13,000 ATMs, 85,000 employees, all continue. I'm talking about the Vijaya Bank, Dena Bank, Bank of Baroda experience. I also want to highlight the most important thing here, the average retail loan sanctioning time, if that is an indicator of what an amalgamation has done. Average retail loan sanctioning time has come down from 23 days earlier to just 11 days. What amalgamation has resulted in for the customer. And also to say the operating profit has gone up by 11.4% in Bank of Baroda. And also the capital ratio has also deposit increasing by 8.8 and the capital ratio increasing by 171 basis point. So if we keep all this in mind, out of the Bank of Baroda merger experience and the current proposal which was announced in August, the cabinet has gone through it, and this will immediately mean that Indian customers, even in these times when we want more credit to flow, for demand to be boosted, we think with the core banking functions being kept intact, the banks have submitted a scheme of amalgamation which the cabinet has considered. So it is approved not just the amalgamation but also the scheme through which the amalgamation process will happen. Of course, it will be happening steadily over the year without affecting the core banking functions. So every service of the bank will be intact, every bank will be intact, but the amalgamation will be rolled out, keeping the customer in mind. Thank you.
Before taking questions, just one explanation. When I was speaking about FDI, I had mentioned figures in billion US dollar. But at one place, I may have inadvertently said crore twice. You are so right. So it was US billion dollars, US dollars billion. That was one. And second, we have given you publications which we definitely like. Prime Minister's reply to President's address discussion in Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Nirmala ji's reply to budget in Parliament, both houses. Then Prime Minister's Kokrajhar speech after the agreement reached out with Bodos and Defense Expo. So all these publications we have given.
So for TV, if you can just repeat that $1 billion thing.
Yeah. Let me correct at this stage because what I spoke was all billion US dollars, figures of FDI in billion US dollars. But inadvertently at two places I said crores. So it's not crores, it's all billion US dollars.
Now, is there a company act made? Now you so can we assume that all imprisonment conditions are being taken out or part of party?
Yes, I think one.
Right. So, you see, wherever grave offences are there, which involve criminality, that means the element of fraud, deceit, and hurting public interest is concerned, bulk of them are non-compoundable. Those 35 sections which are non-compoundable, revolving around this, continue to be as they are.
And let me add here, the group of ministers looked at those 35 also, from the point of view if there is a possibility to decriminalize them also. But the offences for which those sections are there relate to severe frauds, and therefore it was considered by the group of ministers to retain them as it is.
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, Timsi Jaipuria from CNBC TV 18.
Yes, ma'am.
Whoever you say.
Yes, ma'am.
Timsi Jaipuria from CNBC TV 18. I wanted a clarity on the FDI proposal that was there in the Union Cabinet today. What is the exact proposal which has been cleared? Secondly, on the Companies Act, Do we see any further amendments also coming in? Because, as you said, since the time the Companies Act was passed, a lot of times a lot of amendments have been made. But can we say that fresh amendments are likely to come anytime soon?
I must say here that the group of ministers each time must have given at least 2 hours looking into section by section. If I'm right, we met 3 times. So at this stage, we think we've looked at exhaustively at the existing provisions, and I don't see any immediate possibility of any amendments.
On the FDI proposal, ma'am.
See, the Air India, the main proposal is that earlier, because of certain rules, the NRIs who are Indian citizens were not allowed to invest more than 49%. Now they have been allowed to invest 100%. That's a major decision. I told you of increasing FDI because of series of decisions Modi government has taken, and what happened in first 14 years and now in 5 years, that was the FDI.
मैम मोनिका यादव जी बिजनेस।
मोनिका डिपोलॉजी में प्लीज।
मैम मोनिका जी बिजनेस। मैम मेरा सवाल है कि जो आपने बैंकों का जो मर्जर को आज जो अप्रूवल मिला है, उस मर्जर के इम्प्लीमेंटेशन के टाइमलाइंस क्या रहेंगे? आर बी स्टिकिंग टू द April 1 डेडलाइन?
Sticking to the April 1 deadline. Banks are fully on board. They understand. The cabinet may have given the decision today, but they were on course and they were doing everything that it requires to be done so that this will be effected from 1st April 2020.
Okay.
After that,
Somesh from Business Standard. Ma'am, would on merger would there be any regulatory forbearance sought, because the timelines are really short right now for notifying the amalgamation from 1st April? That is one question. And second, how much time would it take for the technological integration to happen? Because as I understand, the Bank of Baroda technological integration hasn't happened till yet. So can you answer these?
Banks in this particular case, these 10 banks, we have been regularly in touch with them, and I want to place on record my appreciation of those boards, respective boards, which have been very, very in detail looking at this amalgamation, coordinated their activities, and the decisions taken by the boards were all done with great deal of work done. So, to a large extent, I'm convinced that the banks are on course. They have no issues about, carrying forward with the merger activity, and that is where I kept underlining the fact that even as they go ahead with the merger activity, effective to be from 1st April 2020, the core interests of the banking, core interests of the customers have all been kept in mind, and each bank has made provision for a dedicated set of people to carry forward with the amalgamation related work whilst not affecting the regular bank thing. So there's just no worry. They have gone through this exercise. They will spread their activities over the year, but surely they are getting affected from 1st April, and there is no forbearance from any regulator that we are contemplating on.
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, Ruchi Bhatia from ET. Now, just a little, deviation from all the cabinet decisions. The Apex Court, the Supreme Court today has, in fact, allowed the trade in cryptocurrencies at a time when the RBI itself had said that there will be a ban on the use of cryptocurrencies, and even the Finance Ministry panel had also sought it to be illegal. How are you looking at the Apex Court's decision today?
I will have to go through the Apex Court's order, and then I'll probably meet up with you all to see what we want to do or how we are looking at that judgment. It'll be too quick for me to say now because I've been in the parliament, I've not seen the judgment yet.
Yes.
जी एसएम आसिफ इन दिनों से हमारा सवाल है कि जो आपने बैंकों के मर्जर किया है, तो इसमें आप कह रहे हैं कि जो 27 दिन का लोन देने का जो टारगेट था उसको 12 दिन में पूरा करेंगे या 11 दिन में, एक। और नंबर 2 ये है
वो बैंक ऑफ बड़ौदा का एक्सपीरियंस एक्सपीरियंस से हमें ऐसे फैक्ट मिला है।
अच्छा, और दूसरा ये कि ये 50 लाख तक जो कॉर्पोरेट में है ये कमेटी में अब नहीं जाएगा। 50 लाख CS के लिए जो है 50 लाख
जिनका 2% का मतलब होती है, जिनका जो CSR में खर्च करने का उनके ऊपर क्या बोलते हैं रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी रहता है, उनको CSR के लिए अलग कमेटी बनाने का आवश्यकता अभी नहीं रहेगी।
Ma'am, this side, I am Shahid Abbas from Cogensis. Ma'am, may I know what is the status of the bill seeking amendment to the Banking Regulation Act to bring cooperative banks into the ambit of RBI? You had introduced the bill yesterday, but and immediately you moved it for consideration and passing. After that, we know
it has been admitted, meaning I've introduced that bill.
So will it be taken up in this session only for passing?
Ideally, yes. Ideally, yes.
Ma'am, इधर शिशिर चौरसिया हूँ अमर उजाला से।
Yes, gentleman, in that corner.
मैम इधर शिशिर चौरसिया हूँ अमर उजाला से। मैम, बैंक एमालगमेशन पे लाना चाहूँगा फिर से। आपने कहा था कि आगे भी तैयारी जारी है। लोगों के मन में सवाल इसलिए है कि यूको बैंक जैसा कमजोर बैंक और पंजाब एंड सिंध बैंक जैसा छोटा बैंक अभी भी है, तो क्या इसके लिए अगले फेज एमालगमेशन की तैयारी है? कब से होगी इसकी कोई घोषणा?
अगले फेज का कुछ भी नहीं मालूम मुझे। Is that clear? Can I say that in English? I don't have an ugly face as yet, or even now, as I speak, there is no ugly face that I know of.
Okay, next question here. Please just wait. I will give you a number. Please just wait. Yeah.
मैम, शैलेश हूँ मैं एनआरआई से। आपने कोरोना वायरस पे मीटिंग ली थी और बोला था कि उसके बाद पीएमओ को आपने एक रिपोर्ट भी दी है, उस पर फैसला कब तक आ सकता है? और दूसरा, मैं पिछली बार भी मैंने एक सवाल करा था कि हॉस्पिटल्स में जो है दवाइयों की कमी है या सर्जिकल मास्क की कमी है। आज एक खबर थी कि सफदरजंग के डॉक्टर ने बोला है कि उनके पास मास्क नहीं हो, जब तक मास्क नहीं होगा तब तक जो है वो पेशेंट को देखेंगे नहीं। तो इस तरह की प्रॉब्लम क्या कोरोना वायरस में जो मीटिंग हो रही है, इस तरह की कमी क्या सामने आ रही है? क्या किस
कोरोना वायरस के संबंध में सभी अस्पताल, सभी फैसिलिटीज, पूरा कोऑर्डिनेशन, और दिल्ली सरकार के साथ भी, दिल्ली सरकार के जो अस्पताल है केंद्र के है, और सभी हॉस्पिटल का टोटल कोऑर्डिनेशन है। और सब जो भी केसेस अभी आए उनका तुरंत देख लिया, अलग भी कर लिया, और अभी तो लगभग सभी केसेस अभी यहाँ जो थे वो नेगेटिव निकले।
I think
एक मिनट, मास्क का केवल एक उपाय नहीं है। मास्क कब लगाना है और हर एक को लगाना है ऐसी जरूरत नहीं है, लेकिन अपने हाथ साफ धोना, अपना ज्यादा भीड़ में जाते हो तो थोड़ा सावधानी बरतना, और तीसरा है कि नमस्कार करना।
Yes, madam, just one question before that.
Ma'am, do we have any estimate of economic impact of coronavirus? I mean, where it's headed and what can be done at the government end to deal with it? RBI has indicated something that they stand ready with whatever tools they have. On the government side, what's being thought?
No, as one of your colleagues has also highlighted, I have had this extensive meeting with industry. They have given us a picture of where they are. Subsequently, I've asked also those secretaries who were present there and those who were not present too. I've given them the input of that meeting, and post that they've held in their own ministries level meetings with people who have some context with their respective ministries. And all ministries which need to do something about this situation are in consultation with those who relate to their ministries, stakeholders if you want to call them, you may, and working out something where a meaningful intervention from the government, if necessary, can be made. So when I held the meeting and have given the inputs back to the respective ministries, they're all working each at their own levels, and finally they will of course collate and come back. So the work intensively is going on in all the ministries concerned.
Yes, Sujat.
Ma'am, Timsi this side. On the foreign listing of domestic companies, there was an announcement that today again Cabinet has approved a foreign listing of domestic companies. What are the rules, and will there be any other amendments required in various other bills, say for the
See, you
IT
asked
or
this
SEBI?
question in a different way earlier, but the answer remains the same. At the moment, there is no other amendment related to Companies Act which we are thinking about.
No, there is
Yes,
an
ma'am.
understanding that IT Act also needs to be amended for giving certain relaxations on capital gains. SEBI also needs to.
The Companies Act will bring in that enabling provision for an existing listed company to be listed abroad, that is listing its stock abroad. Right now it is GDR, ADR, stock is not directly listed, and a company which may not even be listed in India also opting to list abroad. So this making this provision, enabling provision, that is the proposal which Cabinet has approved. Now, just like you had a scheme for GDR, okay, just like you had a scheme for ADR, what will be the tax treatment and other issues, most of it gets covered in the subordinate legislation. It does not involve any amendment per se, to the best of my understanding.
Ma'am,
Please,
rule framework. See, it's a broad enabling provision, class, and what will be the types of instruments you can list or not list. All that will be notified in the rules and will be contained in the scheme. So that rollout may take, a few months. That will, make it operational.
So it will be instruments beyond ADR.
I think you wait for the clarifications. Huh? Yes, ma'am, please.
Ma'am, Sapna here from CNBC. Ma'am, a quick one on the bank merger. So basically, we can expect the banks also to come up with a share swap ratio pretty quickly, because I suppose, there were certain timelines which were necessitated for that. So I don't think that is an issue. You may like to clarify on that. And ma'am, one more quick question. Ma'am, in the last July budget, we had also suggested merger of the 3 non-life insurance companies. Now, you have taken an important step in terms of recapitalizing these companies. So anything further, ma'am, on that in terms of the thought process on the merger plan?
If there's anything, I'll come back to you. I'll address a press conference along with Prakashji.
Second last question. Yes.
Yeah.
Ma'am,
That'll happen.
Ma'am, just one follow-up to cryptocurrency. Just wanted to know what is government's thinking on the report that is available with the government on cryptocurrency, the DA report on this.
Yes, because it is in fact one of the interaction with the journalists, I did speak about it because I had gone through a complete presentation on the report-based input, and at that time we had just taken the report on board without having to take a call on whether this or that way as to how we are going to handle the report. The matter was also there in the
last question. Yeah, please just break. No, we have already identified. Last question. Yes. Please, no.
I have not finished my answer.
Aresh, she has to finish the answer.
I have not finished the answer for the...
please.
Okay. Please, I'll finish that and come. So at that time we had gone through the report, and a detailed presentation was given to us, and we didn't conclude, in the sense we didn't take a call either way. We left it at that. In the meanwhile, the court's case was also starting, and now we've heard the court, we'll go back and let you know.
Yes.
सर 2022 का लक्ष्य है किसानों की आमदनी को दोगुना करने का। हमें जो बुकलेट मुहैया कराया गया उसमें 2024 है। क्या बदलाव हुआ है उस लक्ष्य को पूरा करने में? जो बुकलेट अभी थोड़ी देर पहले हम लोग को दिया गया है उसमें 2024 का लक्ष्य रखा गया है किसानों की आमदनी को दोगुना करने का, जबकि अब तक जो हमें जानकारी दी गई है सरकार की तरफ से वो 2022 की है।
2022 तक करने के दिशा में हम अग्रसर हुए हैं, लेकिन पहले दिन से जब स्कीम बना था वो 5 साल का।